Hi, everybody. If there's
Hello.
anybody here. Oh, I haven't, nothing's showing up. Here we go. Okay. Do you have my phone? Or do I have my phone. So I don't know if there's actually anybody in the the chat or not. Oh, there. Well, okay. Yeah, there's two people here. Um.
They'll stream it.
So you forgot.
What?
Steve forgot the video today.
Oh,
I
That's
did.
okay. I did it.
Should we announce what we're doing? Should we say what we're doing? We were
Well,
starting in mid-sentence.
I'm waiting for people to actually show up.
We can still talk. The video will
Yes,
still
there
be
are.
up. The video will still be up. Anyway,
This is true. This is true. Okay, so this video is I guess it's a kickoff for the Belgariad read along, which we're doing over the next 5 months. The Belgariad is a very beloved series of books from, well, they started the year I was born and have been well regarded ever since.
right. And we're doing the original 5 books,
Mhm.
1 month until we're done. So David Eddings went back, wrote a whole bunch of other stuff connected with this world, but we're doing the original 5 books,
Mhm.
1 book a month until we're done. So they're not demanding books. They don't take long. They're easy to read.
Yeah, they're not too bad at all. This is your first book. It's Pawn of Prophecy. It's it's not exactly a huge tome or anything.
That's the first book that we're doing. It's Pawn of Prophecy.
I really need to get your copy, Steve. His looks better than mine. Yeah, for if anybody was here earlier, I was having technical difficulties for some reason. My camera works, but my speakers don't. It's like I can hear it through the earpiece, but it won't play out of my speakers, and I have no clue why. My pain in the neck. But Trish Bovell says I don't have a live outside of BookTube. Yeah, I don't either.
Today, I don't feel like I do. I've been live streaming almost all of the afternoon. But
Oh,
why,
really?
can you tell everybody why we picked this and what your own history with it is?
Yeah, we were. What were we doing, Scott? That we were talking about the Belgariad. I think we were actually talking about our favorite fantasy books. Scott and I were doing a vid. Well, it was a live a month or two ago, and we're talking about some of our favorite and most informative fantasy novels, and the Belgariad's number one for me because again, it's the first. Well, it's the first series like it that I ever read. It was the first fantasy series that I ever got my hands on, and I read it when I was 13 years old. I read it out loud to my mother, and it has stuck with me ever since. And during that live, one of the people in the group, in the read along group, Angie, mentioned maybe we should do a reread of the Belgariad. And I'm like, yeah, I'm here for it. Let's do it. And it just sort of snowballed from there. Suddenly we have 15, 20 people in the group. And
It occupies the same place for a lot of them, a sentimental place. I get the feeling that for a lot of the people who'll be doing this, it's a sentimental read along.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's very much a nostalgic read along for a lot of people. I know it is for me. I'm like I said the other night, I'm a completely different person now than I was when I read it first. I was 13 years old. Now I have a couple of English degrees. I have more life experience. I have a lot more books under my belt, and I'm dying to see if I love it as much now as I did then.
Have you actually started rereading Pawn of Prophecy? You have.
Yeah, goodness, I actually started last night. What I'm trying to do is read a chapter a day. That'll carry me through the month. so I don't sit down and read the whole thing in one sitting, and at the end of the month have to go back. What did I read? So I'm trying to read a chapter a day, and last night I read the mythology chapter, and it read like Bible verse. It really did.
Well, it read like bad Bible verse.
Well, bad. Well, yeah, but I'm
David
talking
Eddings
about the.
trying to do a COD version of the King James Bible. But that is what, for those of you who are coming to it new, that is what you're getting in the first chapter. You're not getting characters or plot. You're getting the first chapter is really the mythological underpinning of the book.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Yeah,
have to be
and
prepared for that. The rest of the book doesn't read like that. So
yeah, no, not at all. The rest of the book is straight up storytelling. But yeah, the first of the book, it's laid out kind of like the Bible verse. It's like Scott was saying, it's like the begats.
yes. Oh no, it very much is meant to be that way. Characters don't strike each other; they smite each other.
Mm-hmm. And there's the these and the
so it
thous.
was, and so it was done, and so forth, and all of that. It's all the diction that David Eddings swipes from the King James Bible. It's just, I don't think it's all that convincing, and I'm glad the rest of the book doesn't read like that, because that would be a lot to go. But that's how we start off. That's how the book starts off. For those of you who are contemplating joining us on this read along, it starts off very different from as it goes on.
Yeah, it does. It starts out very very dry, but you get a whole boatload of information.
Right.
In those first few pages.
Right. The closest thing that I would compare it to for fantasy would not be a book, it would be a movie. It would be Peter Jackson's Fellowship of the Ring. That opens with a big mythological info dump before you get to anything like interpersonal behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And then no, go ahead.
It's like before you can read this book, you have to know all of this, basically, and it works. It gets the point across, but boy,
yes.
It's kind of dry.
It's amazing how little of this is recapitulated in the novel. In the 160 pages that follow, barely anybody, if they bring up, a god with a half-burned face, they don't explain at all. You just have to refer back to the first chapter to understand if you've forgotten it. You have to refer back to that. Most of the characters don't refer to it at all, unlike, for instance, The Lord of the Rings, where if Beren and Luthien come up, characters will explain who they are. If Sauron comes up, characters will explain who he is. You don't have to go to some appendix somewhere to figure that out, but not in this book.
But they also, in The Lord of the Rings, that mythology is still a clear and present danger in a lot of ways.
Right. Right. Although, I mean, you've got, it's not really prevalent in this first book because it's all hidden. Mm-hmm. But this first book gradually shows us that all of that mythology is still active. That the evil god is still active, that the wizards who are unaging, they're immortal, are still around. All that sort of stuff takes a while to get going. But most epic fantasies, this is very much a classic epic fantasy. Eddings patterned it on Lord of the Rings. And most epic fantasies start out small, intentionally. They start out small and rural. A kitchen, a dining room, an inn. And gradually that world expands. The characters leave that world and they go out into the greater world. And this Pawn of Prophecy does that, but it doesn't do it right away. First you get the mythology.
Yeah. With you're talking about it starts out small and expands. It very closely follows the hero's journey, which again ties in with the Lord of the Rings. But it's because it has to start out small, because your hero has to be this sweet, pure, innocent character who goes out into the world and is utterly destroyed.
I would say in the classic, pattern of the hero's journey would be that in the typical hero's journey, the difference here from Lord of the Rings would be that there's nothing that sets Frodo apart. Bilbo has other cousins. He could have left the ring to somebody else, in which case we'd never be hearing about Frodo. There's nothing that sets him apart until he just decides to do the right thing. Whereas in the typical hero's journey, the boy, something does set him apart. anyway. If you were watching, you would see signs anyway that he was destined for something, right? I mean, long before Paul Atreides goes to Dune, he is having visions of the future.
Mm-hmm.
Or, for instance, in the Wheel of Time. Have you read the Wheel of Time?
I know I haven't read the Wheel of Time.
Well, the Wheel of Time has the very first scene is the main character, who is a boy, seeing a vision of a dark rider on the road that no one else can see. And you know, he's not imagining things. You know, he's not hallucinating. So you know there's something odd about him. And the same thing is true here with the main character in this book. We gradually learn that his whole life he's been seeing a black rider who casts no shadow, and no one else sees this figure. Mm-hmm. And this figure seems to want to intervene in his life, either to help him or to harm him, but not in anybody else's life. So we know right from the beginning that the main character here is marked, that he's set apart.
Yeah, he's special. He's got this great what's the word I'm looking for? When you have a really good family line. It's
lineage.
Yeah, he's got this great lineage to back him up, and whereas in the other story, Frodo has Bilbo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought about that Frodo doesn't really have an inherent specialness to him.
No, he comes to it on his own. He's very very different. Almost none of the characters in Lord of the Rings. I mean, Boromir has Faramir.
Right.
It's random chance that Faramir didn't go instead of Boromir. We're told that Boromir did that because he's headstrong, not because he's special or chosen. Legolas, he's an ordinary elf. He's the son of Thranduil, the king of the woodland elves. How many other sons does Thranduil have? He's been around for 10,000 years. Who knows how many sons he has? Gimli happens to be the son of one of the dwarfs from The Hobbit.
Mm-hmm.
And probably plenty of other dwarfs to pick from. And the whole point of Merry and Pippin is that they are completely ordinary. Completely ordinary. There's nothing special about them at all. I think that was Tolkien's point. Whereas here, almost everybody, right, in Pawn and Prophecy, almost everybody is hiding some deeper identity, some special identity. It's just the blacksmith who isn't. the poor lumpish blacksmith who's dragged along on this whole adventure. He's the only ordinary person there.
He's one of my favorite characters too. I love him so much, and I think it's probably the fact that he's so ordinary. Little man.
So should we explain the basic plot to people? Oh,
sure.
Boy. Oh, there's the boy. Oh, hi, baby. Oh.
Can you look over here? No? Okay.
Oh.
All right, here. Let's try this. Oh. There he is. Say hi, Link. He's having a rough time. He and Bronwyn aren't. Oh, hey, Frida. He and Bronwyn aren't exactly the best of friends, and is my mother's dog. She's not interested at all.
Oh.
And like, seriously, no. He's growling at Bronwyn. But anyway, so somebody asked something earlier I wanted to address. It said, Becky, would you do different voices for the various characters when you read aloud? No. My ability to do voices is wildly painful. Limited. That's the word we're looking for. I have old woman and regular woman, and that's about it. So book 1, Pawn of Prophecy. Your second book is Queen of Sorcery, Magician's Gambit, Castle of Wizardry, and Enchanter's Endgame. And Steve's cover is so much better than mine.
For those of you who are considering reading this, it is a very standard fantasy. It's a very standard fantasy setup. Starts out in a little farm, in a little village. Some of the characters are not what they seem. The main character is a boy. Mm-hmm. And sooner or later, as the plot unfolds, he gets caught up in the search for a MacGuffin, whatever the MacGuffin is, whether it's a ring or a sword or an amulet, doesn't matter. In this case, it's an orb, and he gets caught up in that search for that orb because his destiny connects him with it, although he doesn't know what that is. He's constantly asking, but no one will tell him what it is. No one will tell him what his connection is. And we have wizards. For those of you who are worried about that, there are wizards.
And there are wizards who actually use their magic, which is just so nice. I saw a great thing. Link, would you stop growling? Oh my gosh. I saw a great thing one day that was talking about how in order to write a successful fantasy novel, you have to include a wizard. But for one reason or another, that wizard cannot use his magic. Absolutely cannot use his magic. And it can be because the people in the party just have to fix things themselves,
Right.
or it's the wrong time of the month, or he cannot use his magic, but he has to be a wizard.
Yeah, you want at least in the beginning of the story, you want the wizard to be a source of exposition that no one else knows, but you don't want the wizard to be a Deus ex machina, someone who just solves problems. You don't want that to happen. You want the knowledge that they have, but not anything else. And you get that. The problem with that is that you're going to end up contradicting yourself. That happens later on in the Belgariad. A lot of the stuff that the boy who is the center of the story is being brought up by his Aunt Paul, P-O-L. And the village is often visited by an old man who the boy eventually dubs Mr. Wolf. Mr. Wolf and Paul and Aunt Paul obviously have a long and complicated relationship that they don't explain. And it becomes pretty obvious to the reader pretty early on that they are two of the immortal wizards mentioned in the mythological first chapter, that they just haven't aged, and that for some reason, they have an interest in the main character. They're hiding because they say over and over again, it's not time yet. It's not time yet to reveal anything to him or to reveal him to anybody else. So, and the problem that you have when you introduce wizards, but you won't let them work any magic, is that later on, when we find out what they can actually do, some of the events in the earlier books will be invalidated. All I can think about in this book is, well, knowing what I know about what's coming, why would Wolf or Aunt Paul put up with some of the things they do? Why couldn't they make some of these things easier? Right? Some of the hardships that the group go. There's eventually a fellowship. Those of you who haven't read the book yet, eventually a fellowship develops, and they go through some hardship. And later on, if you read back into this book, it's pretty obvious that they need not have gone through some of those hardships. I mean, it's one thing. Mr. Wolf is always saying we shouldn't mention the name of the thing we're looking for, because the evil wizard who has it can feel that. But that's not the same thing as, making fire when you need it or anything like that. I mean, it'd be different if it was Lord of the Rings. In Lord of the Rings, Gandalf makes it pretty clear that when he uses his power, he becomes more visible to Sauron. Right? When he's on Al-Mansur, when he's up there fighting against the Nazgul all by himself, he says anyone will know that I'm there. When he makes fire on the passes over the Caradhras, he says, well, there's no use us hiding anyway, because I've just announced to anyone nearby that I am here. It kind of makes sense that he would keep a low profile, but Aunt Paul and Mr. Wolf, in retrospect, it doesn't seem like they would.
In the first book, I think they're trying to keep their magic to a minimum, correct? Again, I haven't read this since I was 13 years old.
Why would they be trying to keep their magic to a minimum? Is what I mean. Not just know it to other people, but everyone knows who they are. The minute they get out of the farmland, everyone who meets them knows who they are. But the main concentration of this first book is not magic; it's politics.
Yeah.
Right, you get dunked into the politics of what's going on. What nations don't like what nations are treating with other nations, all that sort of thing. So you have to expect, those of you who are coming new to these books, you have to expect that.
These books are really the whole package. Again, you've got the mythology, you've got the politics, you've got the magic, you've got the human aspect. You have a great journey. You've got great fight scenes. You've got cliffhangers. But yeah, it's what is wrong?
Link. No, baby. No.
I have no idea why. No idea at all. Wait.
It's
Hey.
not fair to your mother's dog. You should just separate them.
Yeah, he's trying to get her to play with him, and she's refusing because she's not interested. So, Vamoose,
Come here, buddy.
go on. Nope, nope, no, no, nope, nope, no more, no more. You're done. Yeah, go lay down. Oh yeah, now look at me like I'm the bad guy. Come here. Why are you gonna go over there? Come here. Okay, fine. Anyway, moving on.
Link, you
So-
can't keep growling. That dog's not doing anything wrong. You can't keep casting a hairy eyeball. You're a guest.
Yeah. All right, lay down and stop being a butt. When did you read this for the first time, Steve?
I read it when it first came out.
Really?
Yeah. And I thought, not to jinx our read along, but I thought it was garbage. I was very interested. I am not one of the people that's coming to this for a sentimental reread. I hated it the first time. I thought it was just really, really bad. And rereading it this time, I reread the first book, and a lot of those bad memories came back. I started remembering why I thought it was really bad. Not only the rotten mythology at the beginning, but vocabulary mistakes. I mean,
Are there really?
When we talk about when the farmer village are talking about the wilds of the ocean, they talk about whales broaching. Whales breach. They don't broach unless they're bringing up a subject at a table. Maybe a whale. If a whale was coming out to his parents, he might broach the subject. But otherwise, he breaches. He doesn't broach. It's just a vocabulary mistake. That's all.
I don't remember anything about grammatical errors at all.
And I was reading along. I remembered that the main characters all have fake identities. That the two main characters who aren't wizards are hiding their identities. And I remembered that when I first read it, I thought there's precious little reason why they would do this. And I thought, okay, well, when I read this again, maybe I will see more of a reason. No, no, not at all. And my number one complaint about the book the first time I read it is that the main character is static, completely static, unbelievably so, unconvincingly so. He's a clueless, clod-hopping little boy at the beginning that no one wants to tell anything to. But even after he's on the road and sharing hardships and in danger and fighting, they still won't tell him anything. When it was the first time I read the book, I thought, all right, well, you're always saying it's not time yet. But by the end of this book, it is time. And he still hasn't been told anything. He still doesn't know anything at all. The info dump that you're waiting for never comes. You do get, a big military confrontation at the end of the first book, but you want a personal development as well, and it doesn't come. I thought it was so hilarious when I was reading the teaser. Oh, what are you doing, baby? Oh, God, there we go. I was reading the teaser in the book for the next book. Let me consult my volume. let me poke around in my volume for what I'm talking about. You get all the way to the end of the book. Here, I'll find it. It won't take long. It's right at the end of the book. It's the teaser for the next book.
Okay.
Let's see. Here we go. Yep. Here ends book 1 of the Belgariad. Book 2, Queen of Sorcery, will reveal Garion's own dangerous powers of sorcery and more on his heritage, which underlies their quest. So the end of the first book says, in the next book, will finally tell you something. Anything at all. You don't know anything about his heritage. You don't know anything about his powers. You don't know any idea why he's been safeguarded all this time by immortal beings with superpowers.
Yeah,
You're not going to know until you read the next book.
The first book, I guess the first book is entirely meant for laying groundwork, maybe.
Yes. But the first time that I read it, I thought, well, okay, this could be 70 pages in the first novel. And the revelations could start at the 70-page mark instead of in the second book. I mean, imagine if J.R.R. Tolkien stretched out Lord of the Rings so that the final chapter is the chapter where we meet Strider.
Oh, Lord.
and you'll find out everything that's important about him and about your quest and about the hobbits next time.
Well, I do wonder why he did that. The Pond of Prophecy is actually quite a bit shorter than the other books in the series. And do you think maybe he was just doing his best to get it into a 5-part series, and that's why he cut it up the way he did?
Well, I think he was told that it should be longer, right? That it shouldn't be 3 books. I don't think he's the one who insisted on that. I think someone else insisted on that for him.
Okay.
But one way or another, I agree that it does look like it was just artificially done.
Yeah.
This was just artificially cut off at the point where it was cut off.
Yeah, it did. I remember it does not end in an ending, even with a cliffhanger, even with a book that has a cliffhanger, there's usually a very obvious end to the book. This one doesn't. It just suddenly grinds to a halt.
Right. The closest that we get to a climax is the fighting that takes place in the dilapidated old palace, which is really well done, really enjoyable, except that I was bothered the whole time by 2 things. Number one, Garyon is surrounded by all of these super great people, lifelong warriors, a very subtle king of a spy nation, supernatural beings, and yet 5 times in the final 10 chapters of the book, he manages to overhear something. He manages to be right there and overhear something. When if that's that easy, he could easily be an enemy agent who was doing that, and no enemy agent does, but he manages to do it over and over again. That was one thing that bothered me, and the other thing that bothered me, it was a picturesque detail that the keep of the king at the end is so old that parts of it are falling apart. Parts of it haven't been visited in years. Parts of it's full of secret passageways and broken down roofs and whatnot. And that's a picturesque detail, but that's not a king's palace.
Right.
Not when you've got armed enemies all around you, including supernatural enemies who can lurk in shadows. That isn't a king's palace. That would never happen. So that bugged me. that bugged me just a bit the second time.
It's almost like David Eddings got, that'd be really cool. I'm going to put that in there without any rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah. Yeah. There were all sorts of details here where it looked like it was cool for him to type, but not really cool for him to revise. Right? When our characters are traveling incognito, Aunt Paul takes upon herself the name of a royal family, a royal household. She's a princess of that household, and everyone in her entourage is working for her. They're part of her household. Until the guard of the kingdom of the king of the kingdoms there where they are meets her and says, "I'm a distant cousin of that noble family, and it hasn't existed for 1,000 years." When Aunt Paul would know that, she would know that better than he would.
Yeah, some of the mistakes. That's actually one thing that really drives me crazy about a lot of books and movies. Is some of the mistakes are made entirely to further the book. They're not natural at all. They're not organic at all. They're not mistakes that these characters would make. And it happens a lot in horror movies. People make, it's like Scott said, it's smart people doing stupid things,
right?
Just to further the story.
You enhance that if you introduce into your story immortal beings who have seen everything, who've been around for thousands of years. You increase the likelihood of that if you do that, no matter where you are, no matter what story you are. If you introduce a mystical, immortal character like that, inevitably it causes more problems than it solves, as you yourself will know perfectly well because of Guinan.
Mm-hmm.
What place does Guinan have in Star Trek?
Well, it's kind of like Q.
Right, or Dune in the opposite sense, because Frank Herbert introduces prescience. He introduces characters who are supposed to be able to see the future, but he hasn't written the books yet. So you have to figure out how to do that. When authors do that, they run the risk. Oh, Hamilton Thompson wants to know how many pages are in Pawn of Prophecy. Let me consult the table of contents. Let me consult the table of. How far down does that go, Becky? How far down does that go?
Past the 8-pack. There's 258 pages in the first book.
It doesn't feel that way, though. It goes by like nothing.
It flies by. It really does. But no, I was saying like Q in The Next Generation. He's another broken character that's entirely too powerful and kind of ridiculous for the storyline. But yeah, in the Belgariad, these are people that they've brushed shoulders with gods.
Right.
And they're making ridiculous mistakes.
They don't act like they are. Like in the mythological opening, Mr. Wolf is yelling curses at a god just out into the ether. His magic is so powerful that the god hears him. He says, "You'll never get this as long as I'm alive." In a mythical titanic confrontation, literally before any life existed in the world. And then in this book, he's stealing scraps from a kitchen.
I actually really like Mr. Wolf's character. I always found him funny.
Yes, and I noticed subtleties in Aunt Paul this time around that I missed the first time that I like as well.
She's a great character. I always like her.
Yeah, because it's clear that she took on Garyon for a duty, and that she has since become attached to him and his family. Mm-hmm. So she is now experiencing something that she didn't. She's a classic portrait of a character who's conflicted inside, who's conflicted internally, and I like that. When she's forever telling Garyon, stand up straight, behave, do this, do that. And you get the real sense that it's partly authoritarianism, but also partly just that she's fond of him. Jesse has never read Lord of the Rings.
No, I think she's talking about the Pawn of Prophecy.
No, she said Lord of the Rings.
Oh, really? I didn't get that far. I haven't gone that far.
Haven't read Lord of the Rings?
Wow. Okay.
What do those words even mean? I don't know what those words mean.
It just means she hasn't. It's time. We just had a big fantasy event. It's time to jump into the Lord of the Rings. I don't know. I think they're too important to miss. Yeah.
You can't miss them. No, you can't miss them. But what are the key differences here? Even in this first book, what are the key differences here?
Between the Pawn of Prophecy and Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, between this part of the Belgariad and Lord of the Rings. So far in this book, one key difference is that the races are all human.
True.
They come from different places. They have all sorts of different gods. They have all sorts of different customs, but they're still all human. Unless one of the main characters in the book may or may, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody in the crowd who hasn't read it yet, but one of the characters in the book may or may not have a tendency to werewolfism or to werebearism or something like that. And in the first book, you are left totally up in the air of whether or not that's just him or maybe many people. Nancy Abbott needs to reread Lord of the Rings. Perhaps the Lord of the Rings read along is in order.
Yeah, we'll see if we're all insane by the end of the Belgariad. But
do you remember one of these first 5 books pleasing you more than any of the others? Do you remember having a favorite?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it was Magician's. Well, no. Which one was it? I think it was Magician's Gambit. Um, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the third one, the middle one, the Magician's Gambit. Magician's Gambit. I remember that one. I remember plowing through that book because at that point I was so invested in the main characters that I was just like, okay, we're gonna finish this. We're gonna read this in one sitting, because I'm pretty sure I read that in maybe 2 sittings, because I read it out loud again and go straight on to the second one. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Magician's Gambit.
Now, do you remember? It's been a while for me. I could swear that I remember that one of the books has an incredibly great cliffhanger. They all have cliffhangers, but it seems to me I remember one of them has one that's just really well done. Is that the one before Magician's Gambit?
I think is it the one where they're all like running through a palace, running through a building, trying to get out, and everything is falling down around them.
Yeah, and you're worried that the whole cast is going to die.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
I forget which book that is, but I remember that was well done. That was really well done.
I want to say it was at the end of the second one, because I remember that being one of the reasons I plowed straight on to the next book, because I was like, oh my God, that's it. My mother was like, it's 2:00 in the morning. I was like, I don't care. We have to finish. Yeah, but it's funny. I don't have very, very strong memories of the books. I have memories of certain parts of the books. There's a scene where one of the main characters gets out and walks on water, and it's a testament to how strong the character's magic is. And I thought that was the most amazing thing I'd ever read. So it was incredible.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of explicit echoing between these books and The Wheel of Time. I think Robert Jordan probably knew these books really, really well and couldn't help himself.
Which one came out first between the Belgariad and The Wheel of Time?
Eddings came out first.
Yeah, the Belgariad
first. But there's a lot of the dark man with no shadow who follows Garion. That is recapitulated exactly in the first scene of Wheel of Time. The first major demonstration of sorcerer's powers on the part of the female in the Belgariad involves water. The first major demonstration of sorcerer's powers on the part of the female in Wheel of Time involves water.
Wow.
The main boy character has a couple of friends who are hit or miss. So does the main boy character in Wheel of Time. There are a lot of similarities. I'm sure there's been a graduate paper that's been written comparing the two.
That's wild. I didn't know that, but I know very, very little about that.
We've got people mentioning all sorts of fantasy classics here, Narnia and Earthsea. How nice to see.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually really, really impressed by how.
You can definitely join us for the Belgariad. These are not high impact books. Let's just put it that way. They are not hard to read. They are not sluggish at all. It's even if you're a little bit on the fence, this is not a major investment of time that we're talking about.
Yeah, Breezy Ann Reed, she says, hello, I'm planning on reading Pawn of Prophecy next week. Join us. We're reading the Pawn of Prophecy.
Let's get a really good edition.
Find Steve's edition, because his rocks. But yeah, we're reading the Pawn of Prophecy throughout the entire throughout the entire month of March. So yeah,
it's a lot to ask. We realize that it's a lot to ask. Lots going on in BookTube in the month.
Yeah, March is pretty darn busy.
Yeah,
but
Irish-a-thon. There's a mid-grade-a-thon. There's March of the Mammoths. There's March Mystery Madness. Probably a bunch of others that I'm forgetting.
Oh,
There's some people who are trying to do all of them all at the same time.
I know Scott's doing 2 of them. He's doing March of the Mammoths and March Mystery Madness. Is that the only 2 you're doing? Which is why he's not doing the Belgariad, because he's a slacker.
I'm reading something substance.
He could easily do
my book at you.
he could easily add the Belgariad. These are not high impact books. You could easily add them on to everything.
His response was, "I'm reading something of substance." I'm going to throw my something of substance at him.
There's substance and there's substance. You know, I'm the first person to say that the Belgariad is not incredibly complex fantasy, but there are all kinds of substances. And one kind of substance the Belgariad has in spades is that it worked magic, no pun intended, on a huge number of young readers. It's a gigantic sentimental favorite. I've had so many responses from people not on BookTube when I told them that I'm reading this thing. That is real. That is a substance that is very real. And it's worth figuring that out. It's worth delving back into that. See what's there. See, you know, what effect that had on other readings. Like, for instance, Becky, how much of an effect do you think this had on your reading of subsequent fantasies? You said yourself you've read in fantasies since then. But this is the one that taught you how to do it. That must have had a long-term effect.
Well, the Belgariad, it actually had an effect on my entire love of reading. Again, it instilled an absolute love of fantasy, but it also opened the door for series. It opened the door for Lord of the Rings for me. It never even occurred to me that I could read the Lord of the Rings until I read the Belgariad, because, like I said, when I was 13 years old, and at that time,
it teaches you that books and series can be really good. That they don't have to be intimidating.
Yeah, they don't have to be intimidating at all.
The dramatic payoff from something you saw in one book, you might have to wait a whole book to get it. Yeah, I can imagine encountering the Belgariad and then just lusting to read more. I can imagine it inciting quite a bit of lust to read more.
It does have a certain draw. It really does.
You're worried that you're never going to get rid of this prop, aren't you?
Keep it coming, honey. But yeah, like I said, my mother had the Lord of the Rings. I grew up knowing about the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, but her books were those white editions that had the little hunk of the map on the front, and they never appealed to me because I'm a kid. I like bright colors, but these, with these god awful covers, they were colorful though, and they were neat looking, and I could handle reading this. And it was short, like the Lord of the Rings, but yeah, they let me know that I could actually read things of substance as opposed to Fear Street and the Chris Pike books and Goosebumps and stuff like that.
Definitely a step up from that. Definitely.
A little bit, yeah. But it's funny. I speak to a lot of readers, even before we started doing YouTube. Whenever I'm meeting someone new, the conversation almost always goes to books. Almost always has, because I've always been a reader. And I was constantly surprised by the number of people who've actually read the Belgariad. These are people who haven't read anything since they were in high school, but they read the Belgariad.
They read that, yeah. It's the same reaction I'm getting. And that means something. That's not just dumb luck. That means something.
Yeah, it makes people who aren't readers read.
Right.
And
it has to be doing something to do that. So, because there were plenty of other fantasies that were about this length that came out at the same time. You won't get that reaction at all. You can mention 5 of them, then you get to the Belgariad, and all of a sudden the eyes go out because people know that. They remember it fondly. So Scott's a little bit misplaced in his snobbery. There's all kinds of substance.
He loves these books. I'm just saying. He didn't like the Malorian, but he loves the Belgariad. I like them all. I like the Belgariad and the Malorian, and I really like the other series he did, the Elenium and the Tumuli. I guess is how it's pronounced.
Well, don't get your hopes up, Missy. The next read along I want to do with the Bookish Bryants is Tad Williams.
Tad Williams?
Oh, the Dragon Ball Chair.
Dragon Ball Chair. Yep.
Okay.
That's what I want to do.
Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn.
Okay. I'm here for it. And Candace,
I want to know what kind of reaction you'll have to that book after rereading this one.
Okay. Are they similar? I know nothing about them.
We'll leave it for you to see what you think. But I've wanted to reread those for a while, and I don't want to do it alone. Now that I know that BookTube exists, I don't want to do it by myself.
We'll see what we can do about that. And Candace, my tablet is not ready for that. But you can always put a blue filter on Steve's hard body cover in Photoshop. What's a blue filter?
A blue alien.
Blue.
Oh, we'd have to add horns. Steve's too intellectual. He needs deep. No.
No, I'm not at all. I'm spotting all sorts of problems with Pawn and Prophecy. Of course, I reread it, 40 years after I read it the first time. But I spotted a lot of those problems the first time. A lot of them. I was thinking, okay, well, you're giving us twists and turns and adventures on the road and a hidden spy and another hidden spy, and then a massive armed conflict at the end. But that's not enough. You're also giving us a main character and just keeping him as a fly in amber the whole time. It should not be true that the character who's obviously the linchpin of all the events in the story is being told on page 1, will you just shut up? You're too young to know this. It's not time for you to know anything. It absolutely should not be true that on page 250, that character is still being told those same things. That should not be true. Your reader is waiting for that to happen. Some of that should happen in the first book, and it doesn't. It doesn't.
Yeah, I wonder why it doesn't. Other characters
in the nail on the head. I don't think this was designed well. That's all. Just
it was a sort of hacked up.
Well, no, not in terms of the writing, but in terms of when it cuts off, when the story cuts off.
Yeah.
It was. David Eddings had been told, you have a trilogy, and no more than this many pages per book. He could have tightened it up. I mean, he's a talented writer. He could have tightened it up. He just didn't bother to do it. That's all.
Yeah, these books could have easily been made into a trilogy, and I think they would have been better single books.
Steve's number one rule of fantasy novels: it can always be a trilogy. It can always be a trilogy. Even the Dragonbone Chair series, you get the Dragonbone Chair, and then you get the second volume, and then the third volume was 1,400 pages long.
Lordy.
To Green Angel Tower is 1,400 pages long. So when it came out as a hardcover that could kill somebody, but when it came time for the publisher to bring out the paperback, they came out in 2 big paperbacks because it wasn't possible to make a mass market paperback that big.
Wow.
It was bigger than Brandon Sanderson. It wasn't possible to physically to do it. So they split it into 2 parts for the mass market paperback. And each of those 2 parts is enormous all on its own.
Wow. That's actually one of the reasons I never attacked the Wheel of Time series, is because each of the books is like this big, and it intimidated me for years until the point now I'm like, I don't want to read it.
They get bigger and bigger. The story just wanders on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah, I've heard that the author he tends to rant about things that really aren't all that important.
Yeah.
To the story.
Just endless soap opera-y and at enormous length at the end there. And the horrible part is that with the Wheel of Time, you know that you're getting a stunning climax. It's referred to in every book. Every character knows it's coming. A gigantic battle between good and evil that even has its own name. And you know it's coming the whole time. And you're wandering around in book 7, book 8, book 9, book 10, and with the characters just moving from here to there, or you have to remember some minor emotional kerfuffle from book 5 or book 6. But I will say this about the Wheel of Time. It's not to Robert Jordan's credit because he was dead. But when Brandon Sanderson wrote the final book in that series, boy, oh boy, he had to write that battle. He knew he did. And boy, oh boy, did he do a great job. Oh my. As much build-up as the Tarmagon got, it pays off completely at the end. So there's that. You have to suffer a lot to do that.
You have to slog through. That's actually one of the things I was okay with in the Belgariad. The battle scenes, they're not terrible.
They're not terrible.
They're
No,
written
the
pretty
action scenes just
handily.
in general aren't bad.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's battle or anything else, the action scenes aren't bad at all.
Right.
Actually, when I'm reading Pawn of Prophecy again, I'm thinking there's nothing here that I can actually call bad. It's just the book is so obviously a prelude to another book, which to a critic, to my critics, the critic side of my brain says that means this book is a failure. Because no book should ever be a preface to another book. A book should be able to stand on its own.
Right. But this book, it ends just after that battle, right?
Yes.
If I remember correctly.
They hit
The
the road. Our characters
it suffers from a lack of falling action.
Right.
It's like climax and end.
Right.
And that it doesn't make much sense to me. But it's fine once you get past this book. It's all smooth sailing from there. But I think this book, the whole series, it's very simple. It's very easy to read. There's no big flowery wild language that you have to decipher as you go, which I think is actually one of the reasons it appealed to so many people, especially of a younger generation. It's because they're easy to read.
But for this first book, you could say it climaxes and then grows flaccid. Couldn't you, Becky? Could you say that? It climaxes and then it goes flaccid.
And falls asleep right afterwards.
Is that what you're trying to tell us?
Well, I wasn't.
Yes, Candace, the final battle in Memory of Light is 200 pages long. And
really?
Any of you writers out there who have ever tried to write an action scene, an action sequence with multiple people, so not a boxing match between two people, but an actual action sequence, like the one that finishes Pawn of Prophecy. Any of you who've ever tried to write one of those knows that it's the Boston Marathon to get 2 pages done of something like that. 5 pages is a massive endeavor.
The very idea makes me want to break out in hives. There's so many moving
pages. It's a 200-page action sequence.
Oh,
I don't know any writer who's ever done that except Brandon Sanderson. So there's that.
I can't imagine. There's so many moving parts to a battle, so many people involved, so many different aspects.
It's absolutely worth it.
I get.
Wait. The Bookish Bryants, Scott, is that you adding Bookish Bryant's comments? What is the 1-volume paperback? What is that? Are you talking about the Belgariad?
Lord of the Rings.
Oh, okay. Okay. So a 1-volume Belgariad would be great. And don't I remember big trade paperbacks of the Belgariad?
Yeah, there are 2 of them. The first one has the first 3 books, and the second has.
So there are compendium volumes, just not all.
Yeah, just for the Belgariad itself. And it's a 2-part volume, and they're big. They're pretty big copies. And I'm getting so much Blue Alien hate here. It's
the only other period fantasy writer that I've ever encountered the same kind of sentimental, emotional attachment to as the Belgariad is R.A. Salvatore. His what's
Drizzt books?
The name of the Drizzt books is Drizzt the sort of lone dark elf?
Yeah, the Drow elf.
Okay, yeah. People who read those, they might not have revisited them in 20, 30 years, but they really have fond memories of them.
I just read the last one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Scott just finished the last one. I actually read the first one last year. Last year.
Scott just finished the last one, so he took time away from Tolstoy.
Right. Slacker.
Yeah, so he doesn't mind a lack of substance when he's reading. Link should be growling at him.
Poor Link is over here tucked into the couch, just dead to the world.
Frida doesn't get dead to the world. Not yet. She doesn't. Soon she will. Someday she will, but she doesn't now. She gets dead to the world when the door is closed and locked. She sits on the bed, and if the door is closed, she will sit on the bed. If the door is closed and locked, then she starts to submit into a puddle.
Yeah, like he's 11 years old. He'll be 12 in August. So he's gotten to the point he's starting to slow down and sleeps a lot more.
Yeah.
And it's killing us.
Yeah.
But
we met two dogs on our dog walk yesterday. We met two dogs who were each 12 years old. White eyes, totally glaucoma, white all around the faces, walking very stiff in the wind. And I'm very grateful that Frida did not scream at them. She did not demand to see their papers. She was respectful. She was very respectful. But one of the two dogs just broke my heart because I remembered how many times I've been through this with my own dogs. I watched their owners bring them outside for their afternoon walk, and one of the two dogs got outside and sort of stopped. And the look on his face was, I'm not sure I'm up for this. I'm not sure I want to do this. They had to coax him to walk a little bit further.
Oh,
I remember that. I remember exactly what that was like, and I cannot believe that it's going to happen with Frida, but I know that it is.
Yeah, it happens with all of them. It takes a lot out of you when it does. So we had one Boston Terrier that we lost really, really quick.
The thing that I always want to tell people when young people, especially who have their first dog or are contemplating their first dog, the thing I always want to tell them is it looks unbelievable, but you will survive it. You are strong enough to survive it.
Mm-hmm.
And you won't only survive it. You're strong enough not only to live through it, but to do your duty right to the end. You're that strong. Oh no, we got a sex bot. How come you got I had a live stream for 2 hours. I didn't get a sex bot today. Oh,
it's me. They're after me. It's because we finally arrived, Steve. I'm so excited. Yeah, you're right. You'll I hear stories all the time about people who can't go that last extra mile with their dogs and stay with them when they're having to be euthanized or something like that.
You have to.
You have to.
You don't have a choice. You have a duty. You have a duty, and it goes right to the end. Right to the end.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what duty is. It means you can't shirk it. So everyone who's in the chat and who's thinking about that, you can certainly do it. It'll be the hardest thing in the world, but you can do it.
And you'll survive it, and you'll do it again with another dog because you can't live without a dog. I know I can't live without a dog.
No, the saddest thing for me are people. I've known some people. I'm sure you have too, where they lose a dog and they say, "Oh, I'm never going to get another dog because I can't go through that again." I've known people like that, and I always tell them, "Well, okay, but what about the 9,000 great moments before that? Why is it all coming down to that last moment? Why is that the case?"
Yeah, look at the 4,000 pictures you have on your computer, and then decide again. The little Link, he's brought so much joy into our lives, and no matter how hard it's going to be when we do finally lose him, it was worth every second.
Yeah,
every second.
It gets hard. All of a sudden, you're watching everything. All of a sudden, you're worried about everything. All of a sudden, you're out at 3 and 4 in the morning. But you have to do it. It's worth it. It's very much worth it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh Lord, getting back to the Belgariad. I can't think about this.
Yes, Hamilton Thompson is referring to my live stream fiasco earlier today. I can't do what you people did. You people did what I wanted to do. You set an announcement video and then you made that video go live. I don't know how to do that anymore. So I will just take this route. I will make an announcement video about the time and place, and it'll just work. It worked just fine today anyway. So
did you have trouble with your live stream this afternoon?
Yeah, I made a video announcing when it would be and putting up a thumbnail and all that. And then I thought, okay, when the time comes, I'll go back into that video and make it live. I had no idea how to do it. No idea at all. Must have tried 10 different things. Couldn't do it. I had to start a different live stream.
Oh wow. Yeah, we've never actually done a live video from YouTube. I have no idea how to go back.
But I'm not going to bother with StreamYard. Everybody from the chat earlier today was telling me just announce it. It'll be fine. So I'll just do that.
Yeah, it
But in the
works.
meantime, we have to wrap up, right?
Yeah, it's been right at an hour.
In the meantime, you're all welcome to join us for. Oh, I'm sorry, Becky. What's the name of the event?
I'm waiting an hour.
You thought I was going to go the whole time without asking.
Crap. It's the Belgariad. No, it's not. It's the Belgariad apocalypse.
Yes, it's the Belgariad apocalypse.
I almost said the Belgariad Palooza, which I think is actually kind of funnier. But it's the Belgariad apocalypse.
And you are all welcome to join us. It's the 3rd of March. You will not need the whole month to read this book. To put it mildly, you won't. The rest of the 5 books have more meat on their bones. They will engage you more. This is very much a prologue.
Yeah, I'm reading.
It has a climax, and it has action, and it has some character development, but you're going to fly through it.
Yeah, it has a climax and then an ending. There's no falling action at all. But I'm reading 1 chapter a week or 1 chapter a day to draw it out towards close to the end of the month.
Yeah, it's not hard at all.
I don't know. I think it's kind of hard.
It's not hard, and you'll have fun handling it.
See, I think Scott's on this. Scott should be on the other side of the room playing the game. Just guess how many times Steve is holding up his cover. Wow. Anyway, thank you everybody for coming. If you're interested in joining the Belgariad apocalypse, please let us know. We'll add you to the Voxer and we'll let Steve.
Just let the Bookish Bryants know, and we'll all talk about it all month long.
Yep. Well, we'll let Steve harass all of you about how many times he's already read it and written dissertations and 14 videos and yeah.
No, Libraries and Labradors. I did not have any sex bots. I had a live stream for 2 hours today, and there were no sex bots.
So we're the special. That's what it is.
I don't know what it is. I was ready and waiting for it. But no, Candace, you're not going to find that cover possible. I'm sorry, and you'll only annoy them if you ask. But it sure does make reading easier.
They'd reach a completely different demographic.
Well,
have a good evening.
Outside.
Yeah, have a good evening, Steve. Thank you.